All right, hello, welcome in, Bird Reboot fans. This is talking your Arizona Cardinals the day after a dub. Cardinals have now 2 wins on the season behind the arm of Kyler Murray and the receiving game of Trey McBride. Thank you guys for tuning in and joining us. And Marcos, we get to talk about a Cardinals win today. I think a lot of Cardinals fans previously have been maybe saying, hey, is it time to tank? How is Kyler going to look? We got a lot of answers as the Cardinals were able to win 25-23 over the Atlanta Falcons. And it feels good waking up this Monday and being a Cardinals fan.
It does. Like we actually got a win to be able to talk about, and the way I look at it right now is we're 1-0 because the season prior to when Kyler Murray was going to come out, it really didn't matter what we were looking at. The offense could have looked great, the offense could have looked bad, and anything that follows would have been just like kind of like moot because now we get to see what we're at, where we're actually looking at, and like at, on all phases, we actually look really good. We actually look good on offense, defense, and on special teams. There's a lot we do have to go over with the offenses, especially since Kyler Murray's back, and we got to see what we have for the rest of the year. So it's not just about just looking at this game. This game is telling, but it's not just going to be on this game. It's going to be what the numbers look like from here to the very last snap of the season.
No, definitely. Yeah, Arizona goes off at least has a one of their better offensive performances of the year. James Conner was back. Will Hernandez played. DJ Humphries was inactive along with Amare DiMercado. Arizona got 350 yards in this game. They did turn it over once, but it really was a blow for blow sort of game between them and the Falcons. They're able to get off to a quick start, did not punch the ball into the end zone. You're looking at a 12-14 halftime game. Marcos, we've seen earlier this year, the Cardinals have really struggled in the second halves of games, being able to put up points in the third quarter and being able to put teams away in the second half. Not the case here at all with Arizona. They were able to, in the third quarter, drive down, pick up the lead with a Matt Prater field goal on a 9-play, 38-yard drive. Falcons were able to answer, but the Arizona Cardinals were able to get back into the lead column with a touchdown. They forced a 3-and-out of the Falcons, forced a punt back at least, and then, of course, you have the big play of that third quarter. Greg Dortch with a 49-yard punt return sets up Arizona in Falcons territory. And with Kyler Murray essentially is able to kind of run up the middle and on 2nd and 4, pass to Michael Wilson, originally ruled a touchdown. We reviewed it. Should have probably been a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown for Kyler Murray on the day. Knee was down just short of the line. And then, of course, as we've talked about, the push tush, it doesn't just exist in Philadelphia. Clayton Tune gets his first touchdown in the National Football League with that tush push. Arizona then is able to essentially force another out on downs. Um, Kind of a bizarre sequence overall. Falcons have just been running the ball with Bijan Robinson, kind of picking up about 10 yards, picking up other passes. You really got to where it was about 3rd and 3 for the most part. They tackled Bijan short. And at 4th and 1, Jonathan Ledbetter, he gets credited with the tackle, but really Desmond Ritter just falls down essentially for the most part. On 4th and 1 from the Arizona 21, Falcons are down by 5. Cardinals are able to take over. Unfortunately, you do have a 3-and-outs. And then at the end of the game, it turns into Cardinals defense seems like they're going to potentially blow it for the offense. They do end up giving up a touchdown, big defensive pass interference penalty that's called. Marcos, I didn't really agree with that call as far as DPI. It felt like that on even the very next sequence. Cardinals probably should have had the same thing happen with Rondale Moore. It looked like he was interfered with on a deep pass in the exact same way. It's not called, but as they say in the as the kids say these days, ball don't lie. The Cardinals do end up getting down the field at least on a big play to Trey McBride. He passes that 100-yard receiving in a game mark, and you also got to see the Cardinals keep the Falcons out of the end zone on the 2-point conversion. That play being made by the aforementioned Antonio Hamilton to be able to get Arizona into the win column with a Matt Prater field goal. Marcos, it was a storybook type of finish for Kyler Murray, getting that game-winning drive in his first game back in Arizona.
Hey, that's that was actually one of those situations where it came down to one player making a mistake, and that's what I covered on my, at least I tweeted it on my X account and whatnot, about like how that was just bad fundamentals on a team that's supposed to be a good defense, and whoever number 17 was, that guy should have been yelled at on the sideline. The defensive coordinator should have been right on him about like what decision he made, which is like something that I've had an issue with past defenses of ourselves. When we go into this mode, when we lose contain on quarterbacks, they usually pick up like 13 yards on the ground, or 15 or 10 yards, at least get the first down. And so in that situation, Kyler Murray was actually so we got to talk about the snaps. The snaps, they look very similar when it came to like under center. They had 6 total snaps from under center. 6 of them, well, 4 of them were run plays, 2 of them were pass plays. Obviously, one of them was on an interception. The other one was on a rollout to Trey McBride. And so he's still sitting in the back of the pocket. Like I pretty much told people, like, this offense isn't going to look different when it came to like how it's going to look when it comes to like formations and whatnot. It was going to be somewhat of the same. It's probably going to be different philosophies, but I believe that what happened was they were giving him more press, like they were up on the line of scrimmage more when it came to like the cornerbacks, which is what allowed him to target these underneath shots like closer, because if they're off coverage, that's when you tend to usually want to throw a screen pass. So I think they were just playing closer to the line of scrimmage, and then they realized kind of like, hey, this is going to be a same situation where Kyler Murray is going to sit in the back of the pocket. So on that one play, they just kept pushing him back. Number 17 got, lost contain, was trying to go for the sack, and Kyler Murray made him pay. And I was like, you don't do that to a scrambling quarterback. You gave him a wide open lane, and there you go. And Kyler Murray is going to make somebody pay, and that's exactly what's going to happen. We'll see what happens here on out when they find out, hey, his knee's good. He can still run.
Yeah, we got to see this, how good that knee was from the first quarter, where Kyler picked up at least some yards on the ground, did not get a first down on the play, but you got to see that there was confidence, at least in that knee. There was running, and ended up paying off in the end with that critical 3rd and 10 play of the game. Falcons bring a blitz. You're talking about, all right, this is one of those places where like your franchise quarterback has to step up. Kyler ends up looping in a circle, something we've seen just time and time again. He ends up being able to see, like you said, the Falcons taking advantage of their man coverage, blocking guys downfield. Kyler, with wide open green grass, is able to sprint off and get that first down. Critical conversion. At that point, you're like, you're at midfield. You need a field goal. You just had this sort of confidence that Kyler just made like a game-winning play in that moment. Like that was what you wanted from your franchise quarterback, and that was what you got. It just felt like that was one of those cases, and we've seen it before as well. In 2019, Cardinals had 1 win on the season. They're playing the Atlanta Falcons again that year in Kyler's rookie year. We said Falcons defense is bad. This is going to be one of those like Kyler going to go off for 300 passing yards types of games. Sure enough, he does. Goes off and is able to pick up the critical first down with his legs to end that game, run out the clock against the Falcons. He does the same thing here in this game, just picks up the first down to kind of get down the field. And then, of course, end of the game. You talked about the Trey McBride catch on the underthrown ball. Biggest thing I think that's interesting is just whatever the coverage and how the defensive was, like you said, number 17 was one of the guys in coverage. That would be Arnold Ebiketie, who's a pass rusher for the Atlanta Falcons. Like sometimes linebackers, they have to run back, they have to cover tight ends. It's just one of those places where the Falcons had just made a mistake ultimately in coverage. Either he wasn't aware of what was happening or he just wasn't prepped for covering. It's one of those spots that you shouldn't really have one of your better pass rushers have to drop back that far into the coverage. Kyler was at least able to make them pay. It wasn't obviously the best throw in the game, but when you trust your playmakers to make plays, and that was a day in which Trey McBride already had catches for up to 9, I think it was 6 catches for 98 yards. he had essentially been your star receiver. We'll be able to take a look at one of the plays that he had here in just a second, which I think kind of set off the beginning of this kind of Trey McBride star performance. This was in the first quarter, about 6 minutes and 53 seconds left. You can see at least here you've got Arizona with second and I believe this is the 2nd and 4 play that they had for the most part. Rewind it just a little bit here. But this was where Cardinals are looking for kind of one of those big plays that they have on offense. Let's fast forward here through the James Conner tackle to get to what we're looking for here. So yeah, so you got it's a 2-yard loss on the play. You got it was a first down I think he picked up, so it's 1st and 10. You can at least see that you got Trey McBride blocking in line. He just goes on a quick split corner route. Cowboy throws the ball before he's even out of his break. Like that's just like you said, it's beautiful pass, but like the touch that you'll have on the ball, the fact that he's not even like truly broken yet, throws it to a spot, and he's not hitting it on his chest. It's a little bit high, but it's only in a place where Trey McBride is able to get to it. This is the end zone angle you'll be able to see here, and you can talk about like just seeing confidence poised from the pocket. A bit of pressure there, lays it up nicely. Grant ends up tackling him on the play. They declined the pass interference call, obviously, because he made the catch. This is just one of those throws that in the past we've seen Josh Dobbs miss these throws. Here, Kyler just layers it perfectly. McBride even has not quite got his balance, but he's able to just pick up. And like we said, it's just one of those things that just looks beautiful on tape. And that is just one of those types of throws that we've come to expect from a guy that you're paying that much money to. If he can't make those throws, obviously don't pay it. But that was, I think, the first time where we saw that connection. We're like, okay, like this felt like Kyler Murray is like not just back as far as confidence in running the ball. He's back in terms of being able to throw the ball down the field and complete on these big plays with fantastic accuracy and touch.
Well, or Josh Dobbs is having himself a good time over there with the Tennessee. I mean, not the Tennessee Titans, the Minnesota Vikings and stuff. So, I mean, I still think we should have kept him and whatnot. He looks like not only the backup quarterback that we thought he could be and everything, but he's looking like he could be the starter over there. So I'm not gonna throw any shade towards his direction. He made some good throws as a quarterback. He also made some throws that there were errant throws and whatnot, but can't expect too much from a guy who's just been there for probably a few days before he has to pick up an offense. But with Kyler Murray throwing that, he led his tight end into that throw, so he knew where the ball needed to go. So it was towards the outside where the boundary was going to be at, just right in the bucket. And the reason why he needed to throw it that way is because he knew that Trey McBride, not only being the taller receiver, but he was also going to be the one that was going to be able to body and use his body as a shield to protect the ball and whatnot. I mean, he's 6 foot. Was he 6'5" and 250 pounds, and he runs 4'5", which is why I thought about it as in this is going to be a special type of tight end. When people were talking about why did we draft him, well, we drafted him because he's very talented. He's the guy. I saw this last year on film. On when they were playing the Atlanta Falcons last year and they lost, he had some pretty good runs over the middle on play action as well, and he knows he has the wherewithal with his hands on how to catch the ball and overextend, and just that's going to be one of those situations where I talk about sometimes a tight end is a QB's best friend because of those type of abilities.
Yeah, and that's something I think that when looking at Trey McBride coming out, and this is some just context, and I sent out a thread. I'll probably put a little bit more effort into an article on it later, but a lot of people did not understand the Trey McBride draft pick when it happened because you had Zach Ertz under contract. Cliff would run a lot of heavy wide receivers. With the Cardinals, this is a team that really is, like we've talked about, never truly had a star tight end, at least while they've been the Arizona Cardinals. We can talk about old guys who were there before, Marcos, before we were fans or before we were born, essentially, where guys like the Jackie Smith, for the most part, people who were some star tight ends. But as far as it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, there's always been either high draft picks or veterans that have been acquired that just had not quite lived up to the billing. You think at least of guys like Troy Nicholas, Rob Hausler were drafted. Even in 2012, the one year where the Cardinals had acquired Todd Heap, someone who was an Arizona State legend, had been a quality tight end for years for the Ravens. He just was at the end of his career. Looked kind of like how Zach Ertz has looked this year. Their entire offense was just broken that year. He retired, I believe, that offseason. Jermaine Gresham, he was a guy the Cardinals signed to a pretty sizable deal, but he never had more than 400 receiving yards in a season for them. As far as it comes to with Trey McBride, and this will be something interesting, is he's already at least on pace as far as when you look at how Zach Ertz kind of had been on pace to set the record for Cardinals receptions by a tight end in a season. Cardinals was a yards for a tight end in a season. Trey McBride right now, he only has, I believe, at least with the entirety of this year, he's got 418 yards already. Like, you're talking about like, and I don't think he's going to be able to duplicate this every week, but if he can get about like 50 to 60 yards per game in the last 8 kind of games or so, you're probably looking at your typical tight end 700 yard type of season for him. And obviously things may change a little bit, but right now at least we've seen his target share has increased when Kyler Murray has been in there. His target share has increased without having Zach Ertz in that role. We'll see if they do decide to factor Ertz back in when he comes in, but he's just seen an explosion in his usage, and he's been producing at a high level. So we're talking about the last couple of weeks, it's been Trey McBride up there with the likes of the Travis Kelce's and other in the world, and he has only 1 touchdown so far on the season. But we were able to at least see how Kyler Murray found and relied on him the same way that Josh Dobbs did against a good Ravens defense. It feels honestly like in a lot of different ways like we could be watching a star being born in the desert. He caught 8 of his 9 passes. The only one he didn't catch is that Kyler Murray pass that was thrown behind him. We can do at least a little bit, I think, of just previewing like kind of where a lot of people have talked about what happened and what went wrong with that play. Some people blame Kyler. Other people have said that it was on Trey McBride. Here, I got the screen pulled up here, Marcos. Let's talk a little bit through what we saw with the Trey McBride on this interception from Kyler Murray to him. This is from Brian Ballinger's Twitter account, which is why the film is a little bit more grainy.
I got the feed from the broadcast that shows like the end zone angle, so we could also do it through that if you want, because this one shows like what they were going over. So let me go ahead and share that and
let's get that one
do it
pulled up, and you can see it gets thrown right behind the linebacker reading it there, and that was one of those cases, at least if I think when you look at the end zone angle, we'll see it when you get the pulled up too, was Kyler is throwing it to the one spot. Oh, we're getting a preview of that last play, at least pulled up there from McBride.
All right, let's see. Let me do, there we go. It's just thanks to Blake, I got another screen that I can work with. So this is awesome. I love this thing. Come on. There we go. It's taking a little bit of time. It should be there we go. So this is what I keep bringing up when it comes to fault on situations that could be miscommunications. And let's just be clear. We have no idea what the play call is and what these offensive players are supposed to do in these situations. So right here, obviously you see him lined up at the very furthest out spot as like the tight end 2. He's in the outside shoulder of I forget. I think that's Swain, I believe. And he's just running like a typical tight end route. If he's supposed to chip, he's supposed to chip, whatever the case may be. He's supposed to read whether it's man coverage or if it's supposed to be like zone. So zone, he's supposed to sit. Man coverage, he's supposed to just continue going. But once again, we have no chemistry between both of these guys. We don't have any chemistry between Kyler Murray and Trey McBride, and he went out for 132 yards. So that's very, very that's very telling, and I'm excited for that. So obviously, this is what you saw from the broadcast view. Sorry that there's a showing now. Sorry about that. So what he's explaining here is that Kyler Murray had to kept shifting over because he can't see over his guy. First of all, I can already tell just from this play that they're not practicing this too much because once again, like Kyler Murray is handing off with the wrong hand when he comes over here, so he's not really selling the fake too much. But right here, he's being blocked somewhat by his own guard, that's when your own offensive linemen become defenders, extra defenders out there. But he's like shifting over. And if he's reading zone, then he's throwing it behind him because he's reading zone right here. So this is a miscommunication on both people that with more practice, this should be like ironed out. And I'm not sure if you, I think it was towards the end of this play, right over here, you'll see Kyler Murray after he makes a tackle. He looks over to Trey McBride and he's trying to communicate with him and tell them, like, see what I'm saying? He's trying to tell him, like, sit. You're supposed to sit. So this is just classic, just miscommunication. If that was the case, Kyler Murray at least, was trying to get on his tight end, like, hey, you're supposed to sit on that one. You're not supposed to continue going. This was a zone coverage call. This was not a man coverage call, and you could tell it was man coverage because nobody followed Trey McBride on that throw. Like, he just released and nobody's on coverage with him. So if he sits in the middle, he sits in the middle. So, and I do appreciate what he said afterwards. I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't sure what he meant at first. Now I know what he meant when he said, oh, I threw it behind him and whatnot. You have to come back to it or whatnot. I thought he was talking about the deep throw that he threw on that 33-yard catch, that amazing adjustment by Trey McBride. I thought that's what he was mentioning. I didn't know he was mentioning about the interception. So he's taking responsibility, even if it's not his fault. He's avoiding, like, people just going out and trashing his young wide receiver, when it came down to a simple miscommunication. Because we know how the fan base can be. Like, AJ Green, we're still hearing it from AJ Green about, like, oh, what if he didn't turn around? Like, what if he turned around? We don't know what that play was. We don't know, like, what was going on. If you look at that play, Kyler Murray threw that ball to his alert route, and he saw a blitzing safety that was picked up. So he was trying to get rid of the ball quickly because he ain't trying to, like, take any sack in that situation. But he also threw it towards the outside where AJ Green had a off-ball coverage on him by Rasul Douglas, who's a longer, lengthier corner. So he's better matched up boxing him out than trying to beat him on the outside, because he doesn't have that speed or that ability, especially with the taller cornerback. So when people keep blaming, like, whose fault is it anyway, it really doesn't matter. It was an interception. It's something that needs to be ironed out from here on out. It's something that they need to work on. But I give kudos to Kyler Murray. Thank you for doing something like that, because your young tight end needs to hear it on both sides. You need to hold him accountable for him making an error, but you also need to be the leader and show him, like, hey guys, like, like, hey, I mean, even if it wasn't his fault, he's not gonna get, like, blitzed on by people on Twitter saying, like, oh my God, that was his fault. No, it's him taking accountability, and I applaud him for that. So thank you, Kyler.
Definitely. One of the things I know, at least with Kyler Murray and everything, was the interception that was on him. He at least actually came out afterwards and did at least say that that it was a miscommunication. Alex D'Agostino, at least for the most part, actually here has the actual phrasing that Kyler used in the post-game interview. Said that, I felt like he could have sat down, but that's something that we had not practiced or worked on, so he was right to keep running. Which, honestly, when you talk about how limited the practicing is, you got stuff like you said, you have to work things out. I don't know if Kyler was supposed to sell the play fake or not. Sometimes you don't want to take up the time to sell the fake because it's not going to work. But it wasn't a spot of, hey, whenever I see this zone coverage, you need to sit down in the middle of there and I'll be able to hit you. That's something that I saw a lot of times with Zach Ertz. When Ertz is running those routes over the middle of the field and you got two guys within the zone, Ertz would just kind of run there, get open between the two, catch the ball, and then try to get upfield. Whereas with Trey McBride, obviously this is just a couple of weeks into Kyler practicing again, and this is the first week he did with the ones. This is just something that they haven't worked on. It's one of those communication areas, like we said, it's going to be ironed out over time. Obviously, you don't want to have interceptions. You don't want to also be able to put the opposing team in a place to, be able to drive down and score like they did. But a lot of things are on the long term of trying to make sure you can see what does that look like for overall, because this is ultimately the decision the Cardinals are going to have to make in a lot of different ways. Is Kyler Murray not just a quarterback, at least of the here and now? Is he a quarterback of the future? And when you're talking about a Cardinals team that is not even not having to make a decision, but it's like we say, teams are going to make decisions off of guys each and every year. Some guys are going to be coming off of injury and lose their job because of injury. Some guys are going to be like I was saw with the Falcons this year, investing into Desmond Ritter, putting talent around him, benching him for Taylor Heineke, and ended up, giving him a run game that ended up running all over this Cardinals team. Was not able to run them out of the building, fortunately. And that was one of the things I think that we saw with Arizona is the defense, at least to this point, they're not going to be able to keep all of these teams down to 14, maybe even 21 points a game. Arizona at least was facing a not good Falcons offense that lost their starting quarterback partway through the game, and it still took a game-winning drive for them to have to be able to go down and get that final play. I do want to at least showcase for one of those things as far as for when one of the decisions we talked about is Kyler the current quarterback, is Kyler the QB of the future? The question then is, what does his athleticism look like? Because players have different ways that they win. Some quarterbacks, like a Joe Burrow, he's going to win from dissecting defenses from the pocket, making plays, hitting his receivers, and he needs to be athletic enough to move. As we saw against the Arizona Cardinals, he finally got healthy, but he had struggled drastically before then. So when you're talking about a quarterback and how they win, one of the ways Kyler wins is he's able to make plays with his legs. Even when defenses think they found every way to stop him, he's still able to make a play. And I think nowhere is that more present than on what has to be the play of the game, which is the Kyler Murray on 3rd and 10. They've had incompletions on 1st and 10, 2nd and 10. You essentially are just, this is what the game comes down to on the line. Falcons have got 6 guys in the line of scrimmage. They end up blitzing 5. They get him kind of pressured up the middle. Arnold Ebiketie falls down trying to get to him. And then you can see at least they've been playing man coverage behind him. Kyler's able to take off, run past that first down marker. Just ultimately one of those design plays where it's not like this is design. It's not like this is scheme. This is just Kyler going out there and making a play and being able to essentially win the game for his team. You can take a look at least here with how where the Falcons end up kind of rushing, where they get 5-man rush pressure with 5. They even are able to kind of expect for Kyler to be able to kind of take off a little bit here. So they've overloaded the left side of the field. James Conner's in there for pass protection. You can at least see with Paris, he's holding Ebiketie, kind of creating a pocket for Kyler to step up into. They've crushed that one side of the line, getting those one-on-one matchups. You can at least see how they're attacking with him and O'Donnell. They've got, at least for the most part, the James Conner having to take on one of the top pass rushers. This is one of those places, at least, where you can at least see how where Kyler's getting kind of pushed back, and that's one of the things that they're designing is making sure that Kyler is not going to be able to get this ball off without pressure. And this is, again, 10 yards. It's a long route you have to get to. He's at least seeing that there's none of the guys that he's looking for is open. You can see Hollywood at least is, I think, where the play is originally designed to. He gets covered on the play. So, like, you've got 2 guys there. Someone's waiting in coverage at the top of the screen. He ends up just being able to use those legs to be able to run back. And, of course, he runs into it for some of the pressure. It's almost like the Falcons are kind of trying to bait him into that. He makes it a Katie miss, just flips the body around, whoop. And then you can see how they're all guarding everyone downfield. They're looking for that big throw on 1st down. No one at least is able to actually pick up Murray because of the man coverage. One of the things that they're going to have to do a better job of doing, this is, you can take a look at Michael Wilson and Rondale Moore. Hollywood immediately uncovers and tries to get open going back to his left. Neither Wilson nor Moore seems to be ready. Trey McBride is there ready in case there's going to be something with the pass. He turns into a blocker essentially on the play once he kind of is turned around and realizes that Murray's going to be getting open. He doesn't block illegally downfield, but that was one of the spots, I think, where the Cardinals were just in a place where they needed their franchise quarterback to make a play. Today's NFL, you need to be able to have guys be athletic enough with their legs. Kyler makes a smart decision. If he had run forward trying to split the gap, Bud Dupree would have tackled him. I thought for a moment that he was going to get sacked, at least in the backfield going through. You can see Dupree is just kind of reading the quarterback. I had thought that he may have had a chance of getting sacked here. Hollywood's trying to uncover and run to his left for a big play. He's got a rusher right behind him. The pocket presence to see and then whoop, make him miss shows that's that Kyler Murray type of athleticism, not just in running in a straight line, but change of direction that we've been able to see before, where he stops on a dime, twists and turns. And, of course, guys are playing man coverage downfield. he's able to just go and pick up that first down like it's nothing. And then, of course, you've got the Trey McBride play. I know that's coming up here in a second, but if Kyler Murray's athleticism is back, Marcos, it feels like it may not be that much of a decision for this Cardinals. Oh, they're tanking. They want to be able to move on to a different quarterback. If Kyler Murray's legs are back, I don't know, not even to say that it's going to be a decision. Cardinals right now are picking outside of the top 2 picks. It almost may not be a decision with him under contract to just move forward with him and put talent around him for the future.
Well, it's just like I said, it's going to come down to him if he's going to like push us out of that area. And if so far, game one, he's already done his job as far as doing that. So if he continues winning, we're not going to have a choice to even find his replacement. He still needs to like win from the pocket. The one thing that I don't want to lean on too much is like too much of those. So once you get that injury, of course you're trying to be careful with that knee. And he got that injury because of repeated times where he's had to cut. So obviously it behooves him to just win from the pocket, especially for the rest of his career. And doing something like what he just did there, when it was only necessary to do it, that's when like you really do want that, because making that twist that he did, I mean, he was dead to rights, and number 17 thought he was getting himself a sack. And once again, like I said, he completely forgot who Kyler Murray was. He completely forgot that Kyler Murray can scramble. He completely forgot that Kyler Murray can shift his body in ways where he's going to make a miss because he's a defensive end and he's not a 5'10" quarterback that has quick feet and whatnot. So he made him pay for that, and he made him pay by winning, essentially getting the game winning like first down and whatnot, because at 3rd and 10 going backwards, he had nowhere to go, then that would have been game over. But number 17 gave him that open lane, got a little greedy, wanted to I guess he wanted to get himself that sack and whatnot. So once again, I would be yelling at him on the sidelines, telling him like, yeah, you basically lost us the game right there, using bad fundamentals or just bad coaching in general for him. Because when you're going up a guy like Kyler Murray, I think you already saw enough to be able to know at that point that Kyler Murray had his his ability still there. And he did. He showed that he can still turn. He showed he could still put weight on that leg and it just turned out of nowhere. He did his classic like spin, and then he just he was gone. And what I was enjoying was I was liking what I was seeing from Trey McBride on that one. He continued his route, and because he continued his route after Kyler Murray was just so far behind where like it was going to be hard for him to even uncork a throw going backwards, he just continued running his route when Kyler Murray was running his direction, which baited that defender to follow him, thinking, my back's turned to the quarterback. He's still back there. Who knows what's going on? And then he just gives him that wide open lane right there, and Kyler Murray just gets
it puts your defender into conflict where you have one option. I can either run after Kyler Murray. Trey McBride would then go, I'm just going to slip upfield, then wide open, and Kyler can toss the ball to me there. Or you have to guard the one play. And that's part of what we've seen, I think, in the NFL is when you do end up having your mix of man and zone coverage, when you do end up playing enough man coverage, you want to make sure you get to the quarterback, because if you don't, running quarterbacks will make you pay. Something that I think we saw often with the Cardinals would be whether it was Alex Smith or even someone with Russell Wilson. Cardinals would play man coverage and then try to either bring blitzes or try to bring guys across the top. And you would see quarterbacks who would just get wide open space. And a lot of times it wasn't even a quarterback. It would be a screen pass that they would slip off to the running back. And suddenly you'd be looking at a Vance Joseph defense. No one seems to be covering the running back on the screen, or they would break a tackle and it'd just be gone. You need to, in today's NFL, be able to play your man coverage wisely, but being able to get pressure in front while dropping guys into zone coverage in the back is basically what you need to do in today's modern NFL. And that just requires talent. Like, it's unfortunate to say, but a lot of teams will try to play like how the Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom played and not realize that they were able to play that cover 3 defense with having 2 elite safeties and like 2 elite cornerbacks, including Richard Sherman, and 2 top-notch pass rushers where you can just rush 4, drop back 7 guys. And when teams would try to run the ball on them, they would have those strong safeties that they'd be able to make those plays in the box while not giving up coverage on the back end. It took so much talent. They were able to get a Super Bowl out of it, but it's just something where in the NFL, you have to be able to keep finding talent to sustain it. one of the things for Arizona that they've had as an issue has been identifying that offensive talent. So you look at the Steve Keim draft picks over the years at wide receiver. You've got essentially after the Michael Floyd and the John Brown years, you've got just some terrible draft picks. Chad Williams turned out to be a bust. Obviously, the Indy Isabella turned out to be a bust. Hakeem Butler, bust. Even Trent Sherfield, who at least had some production, just was not able to fill in that wide receiver 2 level. They had to trade for DeAndre Hopkins. They passed on taking the CeeDee Lamb, who's gone off the last few weeks. He's looked like a top 3 receiver in the NFL the last few weeks. Cardinals had just struggled to be able to get solid wide receivers into the league for the most part. We got to see Michael Wilson produce, probably would have had a touchdown if he had just gotten a little bit earlier. But there's always been one gap for the Cardinals as far as it's come to their offense. They've been able to find franchise tackles, find some franchise players in the past, finding a franchise wide receiver, but it's been a long time since the 1989 years that they've had a wide receiver go over 100 yards in a game. They finally do that with Trey McBride. He essentially had 98 yards up until the fourth quarter, and my joke was like, I joked even through the day of watch him not get a single other target throughout, like, you know, the rest of the game and just get stuck at 98.
Yeah.
And the curse continues because that had happened just a few weeks ago. We had seen, at least with McBride against the Ravens, that he had been targeted by Josh Dobbs. He had been doing a job of looking like he was going to break that record. And he ends up being stuck at 95 yards with 10 catches on 14 targets. Like, they just threw him the ball in the second half, just weren't able to get it there. Against Atlanta, you have finally the last play, at least, that set up the field goal for the most part for Arizona. Got 7 seconds left. This is after Kyler Murray runs, gets tackled, I think, at least for like a 3-yard pickup. So you got 7 yards to go. You at least have him under pressure, at least for the most part, delivering that pass to Trey McBride, split out. This is just kind of running almost like a four verts concept. Just lifts it up. It's a slightly underthrown ball. You can see at least that he's doing this against Jesse Bates, their top safety. I think it was more intended to be kind of a back shoulder because you can at least see that he's got the inside leverage on the safety. So he's shading to the outside. McBride at least reads it for the most part, is going to the corner. Kyler throws him back inside. And if this is an accurate throw, like it almost is kind of one of those back shoulder, come back to the ball things. It reminds me a lot of that DeAndre Hopkins play where DeAndre Hopkins came back to the ball against the 49ers in, I think it was 2021, where they won that home game against the Niners where Trey Lance had been playing and was just running up the middle all game. That's one of those plays where you trust kind of your star player to be able to go out there and make plays. And it's not DeAndre Hopkins doing it. This is a second year tight end that he's trusting in here with the game on the line, throwing that ball up to him. And ultimately, this is where the curse got broken. Trey McBride hit 131 total yards on the day, and this essentially sealed the game for the Cardinals and Arizona, being able to just kind of run the ball. You can see, at least, I think, in one of the areas that I talked about being a well-coached team, Falcons on this play, they hand it off to James Conner. You can see they're kind of about to let him score. Like, there's a little bit of effort that's there, but he can run past him. They've got pretty much like, look, they've got both guys are over here lined up to the right. They got number 3 here is over lined up to the left. He's watching him. And then James Conner has just got kind of a wide open space like they're about to let him score. He basically, instead of just saying, yeah, I'm going to take the touchdown, drops himself down 2 yards short of the line of scrimmage, meaning, hey, instead of giving the ball back to the Falcons with time left on the clock by scoring, I'm just going to go ahead and keep that clock running, force them to have to burn all their timeouts, and then you at least see the Falcons had to call a timeout with, 42 seconds left for the most part. Now there's 39. Same play, the next one. Falcons, hey, let's let James Conner score. There's a wide open zone. He just falls down again. You realize at this point, okay, Arizona's going to have a chip shot field goal that they're going to be able to make for Matt Prater, and that's how they go ahead and get that win. It would have been a tie if the Falcons had converted on that conversion, and that's just one of the areas I think that to me stood out about this game, Marcos, is the coaching. Because when breaking down some of this offense, and we can kind of show some of the charts later, we talked about this pre-show, how the Cardinals used James Conner, how the Falcons used Bijan Robinson, the level of talent on Arizona is not the same as it is for the Falcons, especially on the defensive side. But Arizona at least went out and has quality coaching that puts the players in their best positions to be able to succeed, and the players responding in kind. You don't have a team that just like, oh wait, they're going to let me score. Shoot, I'm already across the line. Falcons now have Younghoe Koo and the chance to be able to drive down and get a potential game-winning field goal. You had one of the biggest plays in this game, which was that 2-point conversion. They throw short of the end zone with Drake London. They don't even run it into the end zone. They just get the ball to him one-on-one quick. They don't use Bijan Robinson, at least, who'd been running all over the Cardinals at that point. It just was not a well-designed play for the most part. I think that says a lot about the current state of where this is not the most talented Cardinals team with a good coaching staff. You can see the burst that Kyler Murray provided, while the Falcons on the other side have all of these weapons, and yet with the game on the line, they ultimately lose to a field goal that should have been for a tie game to send it to overtime. Just was not managed properly, in my opinion, by the Falcons. It even took that defensive pass interference call from Antonio Hamilton to get Atlanta into the point to get that touchdown. This is, I think, in a lot of different ways, was a play where you wanted to walk away from this game feeling like Kyler Murray's back. They have a future that they're building around on the offense. They're able to run the ball effectively with Kyler and James Conner. And you wanted to see future cornerstone players. And I think we got to see all of that happen in this game, Marcos. BJ Ojolari had 2 sacks. Paris Johnson played very well. Obviously, Garrett Wilson, I believe, he played some, but he didn't end up giving up a huge play for the most part. And the draft class for this Arizona Cardinals team, it looks like it's off to a fast start. And I think a lot of Cardinals fans can say now, man, there is a lot of optimism now for this team. Even if they don't win a lot more games in the next rest of the season, you feel pretty good about this team heading into the 2024 season, especially with the number of draft picks that they have overall.
Gary Williams is our best. By the way, he's one of our best run defenders, especially as a cornerback, and his grade overall is like very, very telling of like how he's gonna be going forth as a rookie with the seventh. He has a 67.8 overall grade, coverage grade of 62.9. It's not bad for a rookie, and he's had like I think last game he had like a positive coverage grade. I can't see it on my end because of the window not letting me do it, but I just wanted to give kudos out for like Garrett Williams. He is coming up. I was kind of iffy on that pick, but like now I really like it. Michael Wilson, yes, Michael Wilson. He's my favorite going forward. I was always a Michael Wilson person. I'm so like glad that now he's gonna have to develop that repertoire with Kyler Murray. And he's getting familiar with having a quarterback like that. So hopefully they can develop some chemistry going forward. Tight end, of course, we just can't stop talking about Trey McBride. He's a good blocking tight end, and he's a good pass catching tight end. So that's what you need in NFL today, because then you keep him out there for all the snaps that you need to. You don't have to pull him because you're doing a run play. You don't have to give a tell to the defense, and by pulling him and saying, you know what, this tight end can't block, Zach Ertz can't block, he's on the sidelines on this one. Oh, Zach Ertz is out there. It's possibly a pass play. Even if it's not going to him, you know it's a pass play when he's out there most of the time. And if he is like pass protecting or if he is run blocking, you know he's not that great at it. He's okay at it, but he's not as great as like someone like Trey McBride who's good at both. So he's special, guys. Like Trey McBride is special. Paris Johnson, I think we should just start moving. Let's move him to the left already. I'm sick and tired of this whole shuffling of the deck. First of all, I called it at the beginning of the season. Why the heck did we trade away Josh Jones when he pretty much picked up where DJ Humphries left behind? DJ Humphries is a person who's injury prone, and we've always tried to we question how if he can even stay out the full season. He has in certain instances, but this is nothing new. He's not out there again, and now you have Kelvin Beachum as your left tackle. Send Kelvin Beachum back to the right where he was really good, and put Paris Johnson on the left where he's natural. Let's see what he does. Maybe there's been a situation where some rookies flourish being moved from their the position they're being forced to the natural position. Maybe Paris Johnson will take off as a left tackle, and then we can finally trade away DJ Humphries, and now we're going to need another tackle to draft. and develop and whatnot. But I don't get that at all. Paris Johnson though, like please put him on the left side already. BJ Ojulari, I mean he's coming up, and like one of the special things about BJ is he's not known to be a tall defensive end, but he has long arms, and long arms is a game breaker when it comes to like what's it called when it comes to like defensive ends and outside linebackers because of that reach that they can use. They can go ahead and manipulate like tackles by being able to extend their arms as far as possible and not have the tackle punch and grab them by the, under the collar where they can control them or get them by the shoulders when they're, executing a hug technique or when they're just trying to like, ride them out and whatnot. If you have that extension even as a shorter defensive end where you'll have like natural, like you basically have natural like leverage and have that natural leverage advantage. I mean, that's a good combination of like, having that advantage naturally and not something that's a technique type of thing, which he'll learn with the more snaps he gets. So I love Ojolari. Once again, give him the majority of the snaps now at outside linebacker. We need to see him out there more often. Please move Zaven back to middle linebacker because aside from Kaiser White, our inside linebackers need to have a solid core. I've seen Zaven run as the Mike. I like him as a Mike linebacker, and I like Kaiser as a Will because he's more like he's more floaty. He's more like just the type of person that can drop and defend on tight ends. So can Zaven, but I trust Kaiser more as a coverage linebacker, and he's shown that he's pretty good at being able to read what concepts are. So that's what I would do in shuffling the deck. But I like this rookie class. We're getting good and Dante Stills. Can we say enough about Dante? Like Dante Stills. Like seriously? What is he, like a 7th round pick? A 6th round pick? And he's getting good snaps out there. I mean, Jesus, Monty, I gotta give it to you. Good job. And good job to the coaching staff too. Gotta give them the credit because they're actually giving them the snaps that they need. And not like doing this whole like, oh wait, we have veterans out here and they're not as good and athletic, but they know the system. That really pissed me off.
Yeah, and that's something I think in the past that we've seen is Cardinals can sometimes just not put players in position to succeed, and we've seen that more often happening now with this coaching staff. One of the things I think we need to talk about with Trey McBride, kind of continuing that, is I think that we've seen him break out this season, but I think the level of how good that he has been, not just the past few weeks, but for this season, and what his performance looked like yesterday, he is really becoming a star. Now, let's take a look. Like you said, we talked about some of the grades that was there, and this kind of was what immediately showed up after the game. The offense graded out overall relatively well. You can at least see how the offensive line, for the most part, was not great outside of the 2 tackles for the most part. Trey McBride, however, had an elite pass catching grade at 96.2. Like, we're talking about out of a scale of 0 to 100. Usually you'll see the lowest be somewhere in about the 19s, maybe 20. He ended up at 96 and did top notch as far as a run blocker. Now you may say, all right, now that's an elite grade. How does that stack up at least as far as it goes with the rest of this week? That was the number 1 receiving grade in the entire NFL this week, ahead of TJ Hawkinson, ahead of Brandon Cooks having a solid grade, Keenan Allen, even Noah Brown and CeeDee Lamb. Trey McBride, number 1 as far as it came to it from Pro Football Focus, and it does look like that was the case. Is this just a fluke or an actual thing that we've seen? Well, when you take a look at the entirety of the NFL, and this is something where you have to filter out players who obviously have only played like 4 or 5 snaps or so. Maybe they've only played 10 to 15% of the snaps. When you look at guys who played 20% or more of the snaps in the NFL this season, Trey McBride comes in 13th. Now, when you're talking about that being elite overall as far as a receiver, you're saying this is a guy who is ranking now ahead for the season, ahead of Jalen Waddle, ahead of George Kittle, ahead of a DJ Moore, number 1 wide receiver, ahead even of TJ Hawkinson, and ahead of the rookie sensation Puka Nacua as far as for his production and performance. So we're talking now about the Cardinals having for not just a stud tight end on their roster, we may be talking about a star tight end in the making that we're seeing as he's gone throughout the season in Arizona. And that is something that we really probably can at least credit and say, hey, Steve Keim administration hadn't done a good job of finding receivers, of finding guys. Trey McBride kind of checked all of the boxes to be a good tight end at the next level. He had a huge season receiving, like you said, showed off the blocking skills at Colorado. And one of the biggest ones was he won the John Mackey Award for tight end play, which a lot of people, at least when you talk about like what are different traits that end up leading to what's going to be a star player at the next level. Sometimes it's super easy to say, like, if you've got a quarterback who wins the Heisman, a lot of times that is going to translate into the next level. The John Mackey Award is one of those things that really does kind of showcase that it translates guys into becoming quality NFL players. So let's take a look at, since the John Mackey Award has been around since the year 2000, these are the guys who've won it every single year. So best tight end in college football. So this is a guy who's up there with Dallas Clark, Kellen Winslow the second, Pittsburgh's Heath Miller, Mercedes Lewis, who for some reason is like still playing and putting up stuff in the league, which is crazy. Obviously, you got one of the players who, of course, had all sorts of terrible issues we don't even want to talk about at Florida. There's some guys who did not turn out or did not end up being good players at the next level for the most part, like Austin Safari and Jenkins. Some guys' injuries ended up being a huge issue, such as with Jake Butt at Michigan. But there's other players, at least, that you see have dominated in the next level in the NFL. Mark Andrews, at least one of those guys, has blossomed. TJ Hawkinson has been a star. Even Harrison Bryant has been solid for the most part overall. And obviously, you've got Kyle Pitts, top 10 pick. Brock Bowers, potentially a top 10 pick. And right up there amidst the rest of those guys with the Mackey Award, Trey McBride. And sometimes I think that this is a case where, Marco, sometimes we can overthink things at the NFL level. Sometimes it's say, hey, if you can draft the best tight end in college football, it's probably a good draft pick. That's something that the Cardinals were able to do. And we can see it sometimes takes time for some of these tight ends to be able to kind of, go and be able to become stars. We saw a TJ Hawkinson. It just wasn't a thing that he really seemed to explode when he was in Detroit. After he gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings, he ends up just dominating and looking like a stud. This is one of those things, I think, when it comes to like setting yourself up for the future. Whatever criticism we've had of the team building for the Cardinals, you at least have to credit the Arizona Cardinals for what seemed like a baffling draft pick at the time. They went and took one of the better talents available in Trey McBride, and we've seen that now coming to fruition in the 2023 season, something that we had not made. Well, I think he was drafted in 2022, but 2 years into it now, we've been able to at least see him paying off in spades, and probably means, Marcos, we're not going to be talking about Brock Bowers as far as a need for the Arizona Cardinals. We may even look at more of the offensive line or other types of needs for them, because they look like they've already got a really good receiver who's just blossoming now on their roster.
Oh yeah, it really helps when you hit on a second round pick, and then when you hit on a second round pick that's a tight end that we never have really had as far as like an elite one, and if we did, we picked them on off of like the whole, hey, he's a good blocker, maybe he might be able to flourish as a pass catcher. That was what was our last highest drafted tight end. That was his profile from Notre Dame. I don't even remember what his name is because I don't even care. But Trey McBride being up there.
That was one of the most brutal
2017.
This Troy Nicholas was the guy that they made. I was thinking of it was Troy Nicholas, second round pick. Rob Hausler as a third round pick. They never saw the field. Nicholas was a guy who was basically just a blocker who couldn't do anything receiving, and he wasn't great at blocking. And Hausler was he's a small school, fast tight end. I think it was somewhere out of like Central Florida, unless I'm mistaken, before they had kind of become more of those powerhouses. Actually, it was a small like D2 school, I think it was, at least for Rob Hausler. But it was a draft pick where you were kind of banking on the upside for him because he was fast. He had a fast 40. He was at Florida Atlantic is where the school was. He had a fast 40 time, like ran in like the 4.4s for his 30-yard, which is great for his size. And he ends up at least with basically 109 catches for about 1,000 yards in his NFL career. But that's over the span of 6 years. So he just had never ended up being a guy that was able to be more than just kind of a big receiver. And in today's NFL, like you said, if you can't block, you don't get the rock. That's just how it is. Having a guy who's physical and can have that twofold role is what you need as an offensive team to be able to force defenses into having to provide guys who are linebackers who can't cover as much. And I think that's something that also stands out to me on the other side of the ball. We can take a look at as our kind of a wrapping up for kind of our talking about this game and looking at the rest of the season. Best defensive grade came to BJ Ojulari, who actually didn't have a lot of overall snaps as far as I think we would have liked to have seen. Obviously, he had about 37 snaps total. He ended up finishing with 2 sacks on the day. He had 10 snaps in coverage, popped up with an almost elite grade there, as well as doing solid with tackling. His run defense had the highest defensive grade on the Arizona Cardinals, right ahead of Zaven Collins. And like you said, young players, you got Dante Stills, Garrett Williams up there with the likes of the Buda Bakers. You can kind of see at least that there's some building blocks that the Cardinals have with these young guys, especially these 3 rookies moving forward. Now I think you just have to look at the rest of the spots. Like obviously, you maybe don't have an elite pass rusher, but you can kind of keep building on Ojulari. You're able to at least see how the run defense and guys getting off blocks has been good. A lot of the guys that you're probably going to need to look at as far as upgrading are your cornerback spot, being able to get another type of outside linebacker for the most part, at least, who's able to kind of keep up at least against the run. The interior of the defensive line, your defensive tackle, your nose tackle. Depending on what goes on as far as with Jalen and Buda Baker, you really are just kind of going to be needing to grab a corner, build the defensive line, and then hopefully see if you can hit on one of these inside linebackers, because I think we can all agree Kaiser White has been a solid starter for the Arizona Cardinals. He's not a star. I don't think we expected him to be a star. Maybe flipping him to the playmaking role, as far as like you mentioned with him and with the likes of Zaven Collins, will work. It's just one of those spots, at least, where it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Arizona, because in the NFL, you want to be able to rush for, whether that means that you're able to make it work with the Zaven, being able to play at the inside linebacker role and trying to upgrade, your pass rushers. It's going to be a really interesting decision for him, because right now, honestly, the decision on Zaven Collins versus the decision on Kyler Murray feels like it's a no-brainer at this point. We'll see. Obviously, Kyler has to stay healthy. Team has to be able to compete. But right now, you've really set yourself up, at least, for the Cardinals to have a top pick in the NFL draft. And there's a lot of talent and moves that you'll be able to make as a result. So here's kind of the current standings that we'll have for the most part. You've got Caleb Williams and Drake May. Right now, the Patriots, they are in need of quarterback badly. Like, you're probably talking about a team, either if Chicago and Justin Fields plays well, trading up. They've got Brock Bowers over here. That's not a draft pick that's going to probably happen. You've got a guy in an Olu Fashanu and a Joe Alt who are franchise left tackle prospects. And then later, at least for the most part, you see they've got a cornerback here in Cooper DeJean, I believe at least, who's looked like a top-notch corner at the NFL level. Being able to add an offensive line prospect, or maybe even a pass rusher such as a Dallas Turner, and then adding someone as a corner on the back end, maybe even a defensive lineman like Jersey Newton. Marcos, there is so much, I think, at least as Cardinals fans, that we can talk about of how this team is prepped for the future. If Kyler Murray is their guy moving forward, and you don't have to start from scratch with a quarterback, this is probably one of the best setup Cardinals teams in years. If you're a Cardinals fan, it's been a down year. This is only your second win of the season, but there's so much optimism moving forward. Oh, Marcos, want to make sure.
Oh, there we go.
You can switch there. All right.
Yeah, now I'm the one who did it. Oh, I didn't even see it at the bottom. Anyways, going with what I'm looking at, like if we're not even going to be able to get Marvin Harrison Jr., I think we should just trade back. I'll be honest with you, because we do. So, of all the research that I've done as far as like what's important for an offense in today's NFL, yes, getting offensive linemen is very important because you need them to be good. But there's like a trajectory, like a chart that shows where that drop off starts happening. And I'm not sure if I can find it right now. I'll pull it up for next time. It's a chart where it comes with value, and it's like when you're like horrible, you're just like down here, but it goes all the way up to where it hits the 70s or 75, and then it starts dropping back off again. Why is that the case when it drops off when you're at a 90? Because if you're a 90, you're supposed to be valuable. Well, it comes with two different factors. One is the price tag for a big time tackle. You don't want to let go of a tackle like a Trent Williams from like
Yeah.
San Francisco. You're not going to let him.
Smith. These are like the elite types of offensive linemen that you're looking at. We had 1 year of that from DJ Humphries in the year 2020, and then we had a bit of a regression in 2021. 2022, we ended up seeing, at least overall, just injuries, issues, problems. There was enough of that with the aging, with the knee, with other pieces, that it made a lot of sense for them to go out and get a Paris Johnson. We did at least see some of the highest offensive grades were between him and Kelvin Beachum, played fine at left tackle. I think that a lot of what I'm looking at right now with Paris is if you're the Cardinals, trade back and be able to either get another type of a player. There's a lot of other types that are out there. Like, one thing I've been very adamant on is this is a really good wide receiver class. Like, you're not just looking at Marvin Harrison Jr. He may be one of those like generational type prospects that we talk about, but someone like a Keon Coleman, seeing how Malik Neighbors has just been super effective. Rome Odunze with Washington has been really good as well. And then, of course, we've got another wide receiver who doesn't even get talked about, at least, who's also a first-round talent, and Emeka Egbuka at Ohio State. If you're a Cardinals fan, you're looking at saying, hey, do you want to pay Hollywood Brown like, $14 to $17 million a year for the next 4 years? Or do you want to get a big, tall, like 6'3", 6'4" type of wide receiver? Even Mbuka is 6'1", 205 pounds. It, to me, feels like, at least on a controlled contract for a year, I would probably lean that way, even knowing that this is, more of the Christian Kirk kind of smaller slot receiver type that you probably would prefer with Hollywood, who we've seen he can play outside, he can be a wide receiver one. We've seen other edge rushers this year, obviously with cornerbacks. You've got Kool-Aid McKinstry and Cooper DeJean. There is a lot of talent, obviously, in this draft, and like you said, if you're not able to get a Marvin Harrison Jr. and you have a wide quarterback, like whether it's Michael Penix, I know that there's a lot of talk for Heisman with LSU's Jaden Daniels, who ran for over 200 yards the other game in the SEC. He's having a fantastic year. If you do see the draft fall like this with the top two teams needing quarterbacks, and Marvin Harrison Jr. goes number 3 overall, they don't trade down, they just take him. This becomes the prime spot for a quarterback trade up, because a team like the Packers, they haven't looked all that good with their quarterback spot. You can take a look at least at a team even like the Atlanta Falcons, being able to get their long-term type of answer. A team like the Raiders, who now are like having to kind of throw 4th-round draft pick down there, making a massive trade up, maybe giving up a couple of future first-round picks. I agree with you with that. This would be a spot where I think you look at taking that top tier tackle. These are two of the best offensive tackle prospects we've seen. I think then the drop off probably happens after pick number 6 here for the most part, as far as elite talent. There's probably not a need if Trey McBride is able to continue this pace. I also don't like taking tight ends top 10 anyway. We've seen that usually if you can find a Trey McBride that's kind of late first at best or falls into the second round, you can get a top quality performer. That kind of changes a lot of what we're looking at with Arizona. You can probably either look at stacking the defense or trading back from one of these different spots to a quarterback-friendly team. If you can't, just take one of those offensive tackles, pair them with Paris Johnson, and have protection for Kyler Murray that's going to keep him upright for years to come. A lot of different options, I think, for the Cards. Marcos, which one, if you had to kind of pick one today, would you look for? Because I've got my thing that I would at least say, but I want to kind of hear your questions and what your thoughts are first.
I think we just need to get Kool-Aid McKinstry if we're going to do that. So we trade back because we desperately need a cornerback. So a lot of corners that do go in the first round do end up becoming at least average to above average type of players. Sometimes they might be Pro Bowlers, sometimes, but it really does drop off, and it does become like somewhat of what I don't know what would be like the term for it. Like, you're taking a shot at a cornerback. Like in the third round. Obviously, we did well, but that's because Garrett Williams was a first round talent. His issue was that he couldn't stay healthy. So that was something that played dividends in our part,
Yeah, he tore
and
his
that's great.
ACL. Yeah.
And that's great at least. For any other position, like maybe edge rusher, you can kind of look at the first and second rounds and then see like the difference. Like there was something I was looking at earlier about BJ Ojolari. So I was looking at his arm length, and when I was discussing that earlier, he's 6'2", so he's like down there in the 10th percentile, and he's 15th percentile in height, 10th percentile in weight, but his arm length is at the 77th percentile at
Long
34 and a
arm
half
pass
inches,
rusher. So that's what we
and
look
big
for.
hands. Yeah, 91 percentile with hands. So he has the ability to be able to control offensive linemen with those long arms, because a lot of offensive linemen are averaging between 33 to sometimes even 34, but sometimes you'll have elite ones be at 33 inch arms or 32 even inch arms, which is considered being like a T-Rex type of situation. But this is very like right here, this gives them the natural talent advantage of like, hey, you can't teach arm length, you can't teach like hand size, you can't teach those type of things, but because you have those tools and you're in this part, which I mean the weight is kind of concerning, but I mean, you got to have him be like kind of slender because he's going to be a speed type of rusher as well. But the height gives him the natural leverage to be able to win against these tackles who are usually like 6'5" or 6'4". So this is a great.
He's a
people
bit
might see
shorter. He's a bit lighter than like the elite prospects. But like we said, I think that if you're taking him in the second round, your expectations may not be for him to be a high-end pass rusher, but rather to be more of like an Ardal Ebiketie, who he's not going to be your number one edge rusher, but he's your number two, and he's going to be different from a Marcus Golden. And Golden was essentially a short-armed, shorter type of effort guy that would get there for the most part. Whereas your typical long-arm pass rush type, that is, I think, where Ojolari more fits into, which we've seen with the Tennessee Titans. They've had a guy like Harold Landry, who overall has been not in the top 10 as far as it comes to with pass rushers, but he's like comfortably top 15 to 20 pretty much every single year. And that's, I think, with when building a team and being able to hit on draft picks, that's something that you do need to have. And it's exciting, I think, to be able to see the Cardinals already getting some rookie returns from a pass rusher, and something that they really needed. Now, Ojolari was hurt. He couldn't work out at the draft, unfortunately. To be able to actually put in more than just like the broad jump, the arm length, being able to do the vertical jump. He didn't do as many of the 3-cone drills. So I don't think that he's going to end up in the same category as a Harold Landry. Landry was someone, at least when you're talking about like the 3-cone, the shuttle, being able to actually like have some more of the explosiveness. We don't have those testing numbers, unfortunately, for Ojolari. There's stuff that we can see on tape that I think points out to some of those different places. But really, it's a spot of you're probably going to need to look at adding at least one other edge rusher in this draft to be able to actually kind of have a complete aspect. And it'll be really interesting to see who the top edge rushers are in next year's draft, who are going to be some guys who are free agents, maybe even a guy who may be available for trade. There's all sorts of things I think that we can look at for next year in terms of the Cardinals building this roster. Before we kind of get out of here, I did want to at least try to be able to bring up something of like you said about when it comes to looking at some of the different places or needs for next year. Right now, the Cardinals, I think you want to try to finish this year and know who are some of those building blocks for next year. To me, at least right now, I think it's pretty clear some players who they're probably not going to be moving forward with. I think we can see that the cornerback room needs upgrading. I think that we can see that with Dennis Gardeck, he's probably going to be around, but he's still more of your special teams guy. The linebacker room is probably going to need a few more draft picks. The Cardinals next year have, I believe it's 2 first-rounders, 1 second-rounder, 3 third-rounders. This is before they probably get another potential draft pick from losing a guy in free agency, at least, who can end up being maybe a 4th or a 5th-round draft pick that they'll get back. They were able to at least get, I believe it was that 5th-round pick that they were able to, I believe unless I'm mistaken, they sent out for Josh Dobbs. They've gotten back the 6th-round pick, and with Josh Dobbs, how he's played, it's kind of funny how the trade lined up. Cardinals gave Josh Dobbs to the Vikings. Vikings sent them back a 6th-round pick, and then if Dobbs plays enough, Cardinals had sent a 7th-round pick with some conditions attached. Well, guess what? They're probably going to get that 7th-round pick back. So essentially, you just said, hey, here's Josh Dobbs and a 7th. By the way, we get the 7th back. We get that 6th also as well. So really, they moved back from that 5th-round pick that they acquired a couple of spots to the 6th, and they didn't even have to give up their 7th-round pick. You got 8 games of a decent starter out of it. I think the question I have, Marcos, is, and this is maybe something to look at, if you have the opportunity, like let's say the Patriots go, hey, we want to take a quarterback, and Cardinals go, hey, like, I know you want to take a quarterback here. Would you consider giving up one of the Cardinals draft picks, maybe even one of those 3 third-rounders, see if you could entice the Patriots to move up one spot, get that Marvin Harrison Jr.? Maybe if there's other teams like they say, hey, we want to trade back here. We know the Cardinals, you're not going to take a quarterback. You know, the Bears, they're taking a quarterback. A team like the Packers, a team like one of these other teams may try to trade up to Chicago and get one of those types of players, at least for the most part, who's a quarterback. Patriots gotta need to figure out some other picks they're gonna have to do. They're gonna have to try to rebuild some of their team. Would you feel like that you would give up anything for Marvin Harrison Jr., or is that almost too much to ask for this Cardinals team that needs a lot of these picks to rebuild?
I'm all full on Marvin Harrison Jr. I think if you're gonna help out your quarterback, you got to help him out with somebody who's gonna be an elite type of player. You need more than just one top notch wide receiver. And so far, like what we've seen from Michael Wilson is it's great. It's like he has a high ceiling ahead of him, but he's gonna need some help as well. And I'm not. I know people are sold on Hollywood Brown. I'm not. I'm not sold on him. I don't think he can get off press very well. I don't think he's physical to be able to fight these physical type of corners who like they know what to do when it comes to him is beat him up at the line of scrimmage, and he can get open downfield. We just haven't seen that transpire yet between him or Kyler Murray at this point, and they're best friends. They're supposed to have the best chemistry of anybody on the team. And like, I mean, he laid out for that throw, and maybe it's not his fault that he doesn't have the height to be able to get that ball, but you see other receivers that can lay out, they have that body control, they can do that. So with him, I'm not sold on him. I think it would be a mistake if they try to extend him. If he comes back for a modest amount, then that's great. But like a Marvin Harrison Jr., if you're talking about somebody that can be Kyler Murray's best friend going forth on a rookie scale, like if you're talking about like a Justin Jefferson, how important he is, or like a what is his name from Buffalo? I always do this.
Yeah,
Um,
Diggs.
that yeah, Diggs, Stephon Diggs is important to like a Josh Allen, or like a Chase, like a Jamar Chase to a I keep forgetting these names, man. Like
Yeah,
I
no,
can't.
those are all right, at least for each of those. And I
Those are
think the
elites.
biggest, yeah, those are top-notch players. The biggest thing also too is you look at contracts and where they're signed amongst the elites. And we've got this from Over the Cap right here that will show. The biggest thing when it comes to contracts and free agency is the demand is always going to be probably higher than the player by keeping them is going to be because they're a free agent. Um, this is something I think is really curious. So I want to at least highlight your top receiver in the NFL making $30 million a year is Tyreek Hill, and he's going to probably have like 2,000 yards this year. You have guys like Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, who are elite. There's some guys who signed deals this past year, whether it was in free agency or to return to their team, that probably have closer comparables to the likes of Hollywood Brown, because obviously you're not going to say that A.J. Brown and Hollywood Brown are even close. You're going to be looking at more of this range for a Deontay Johnson, guy who's shifty, a bit smaller, can get open. He signs with the Steelers an $18 million a year contract for the most part, with a total guaranteed of $27 million. He's going to be a free agent in 2025, so it's about a 2-year deal that he gets for the most part. People always were shocked at the Christian Kirk deal when it came out, for the most part, that he had gotten $72 million total value. I think Hollywood Browns would be closer to 3 years, about $18 million a year or so, with about a total of 37 million guaranteed. And the one that kind of made a lot of these contracts blow up was Mike Williams. What happens if you get a big wide receiver on the market? Well, he signed at least a $20 million a year contract for 3 years. I think you're probably going to be looking at between this Deontay Johnson contract at probably a little bit higher than that. I don't think he's going to get the Chris Godwin, Mike Williams. It's going to be probably about that. The low end, if you can get him for kind of cheap, you're probably looking at Hunter Renfrow. Maybe still $16 million or so a year. Because when you get down into these guys, the Michael Gallup for each one for the year, the Jacoby Myers, Tyler Boyd, these are veteran wide receivers who just are not quite at the level they used to be. Or in the case of the DeAndre Hopkins, look at what stands out between each of these guys. Like 28 years old, 27. Hopkins is 31 years old. He's had obviously some injury stuff in the past for the most part. So you're going to be looking at for Hollywood Brown paying in that Tyler Lockett, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson range. I think I'm kind of with you. I don't know if the Cardinals are going to be in a position to get a Marvin Harrison Jr., but as the way it stacks up, if you've got teams that are quarterback friendly and you can still end up somewhere in the top 5 or so, I think it makes a lot of sense to try to get one of these elite type of players up here on a cost controlled contract. I don't know if it means giving up a pick or not, but the way the Cardinals have lined up, they only have 2 wins on the season. They're still going to be one of the teams that's picking probably in the top 5 of the NFL draft. Maybe that changes if Kyler Murray wins enough games, but that is something that it feels like with this team is they just are probably going to be looking at having to make a decision on a Hollywood Brown at the end of the year. And we'll see what happens at least. It's not going to be, I think, a difficult decision. I could see a team like the Panthers in free agency just saying, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
We'll give you $18 million a year because we have no first round draft pick this next year. That is a number 1 overall pick. Potentially, maybe it's at least for your top 3 going to Chicago. That second round pick that they have was given up to Chicago as well. The first pick they spent last year in Jonathan Mingo. He's a bigger guy, but they've been lining him up outside. He's probably more of a slot player. They're going to need someone who at least is able to get open, can get downfield. They could be Hollywood Brown, where they could line him up on the outside, move on from Adam Thielen, or even put Adam Thielen into a different type of a role. That's something where I could see Hollywood Brown being a guy that they pursue, or even a different team that's needing someone else for the most part to fill in a spot. If the Bears are going to take a quarterback with their top pick, and if they win enough games where they're out of the Harrison Jr. conversation with Justin Fields, maybe they end up being one of those teams that's like, hey, we got DJ Moore here. We've got Hollywood Brown we can add here. We've got a buttload of cash to be able to spend. We'll just have to see. But I think I agree with you on this is a team that we want to see the Cardinals make a move toward the future, and that may involve trying to get one of, in my opinion, at least these top receivers getting into the fold if you can, even if that's with your later first round pick. That's a lot for today for the most part. It's been a huge thing for the Cardinals to be able to win. Marcos, let's go ahead as we log off and tell people where we can find the content for each of us and some of our future plans that we have for podcasts coming up.
All right, so you could always find me on Twitter, of course, at Pancake Soul, just like it says right there. And you can find me at AZ Sports Underground. I have a few articles that are out and whatnot. And for the future, we were hoping to get some more collabs going forward, especially the one we had that was very exciting with our 2 main guys that are 2 of our favorite guys and stuff. So we will go ahead and schedule that, and we'll let you guys know when that's going to be going forth. But we are planning on having Evan as well from the He's on Fire podcast. We will let you know when that's going to go down. And that's for so far. I mean, those are the guests that I have in line. Of course, you, Blake, let us know where we can find you. And where we can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at Blake Murphy7 on Twitter as always, and then at writing at revengeofthebirds.com. And of course, make sure you're listening to the Bird Reboot podcast. Make sure that you like, subscribe, give us a review as well if you love the content that's there, if you love the cars. Cardinals win, they get to 2-8 on the season. We'll be back to look at a difficult matchup against a Houston Texans team that had draft implications for the Arizona Cardinals. Maybe you wanted to try to beat this team at the start of the season. Now we get to talk about C.J. Stroud and a Texans team that knocked off the Cincinnati Bengals this past Sunday. It looks like a ferocious road matchup for the Cards. Meantime, that's all it is for us today, everyone, on the Redbird Reboot. It's time for us to log off.
See you guys.